Who is Jack Turban?
So Jack Turban is a child psychiatrist currently at the University of California in San Francisco. He's done research in this field. He's published a number of papers. Some of them are so egregiously flawed, it's a surprise that they even got through the peer review process. I can give you an example of that later on if you'd like. He's become one of the leading figures of the gender-affirming movement. He's frequently cited in the mainstream media. And he's made several appearances in federal courts, testifying on behalf of students who sue their schools, or rather against states that are trying to regulate gender-affirming interventions. He's just one of these kind of activist doctors who is so caught up in the narrative, is so ideologically blinded that he just fails to report honestly on the findings of his own studies, and to report honestly to the media on what the state of the evidence actually is. So maybe if I could just give an example of his recent paper in Pediatrics, which is the peer-reviewed journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is perhaps the most captured of our institutions, medical institutions, on this issue. The paper tried to claim that social contagion, which you mentioned in your introduction, that it's not happening, that it's not the reason why, why the number of kids identifying as transgender and presenting at gender clinics has skyrocketed in recent years. And the way that he tries to debunk it is by saying, look, in these two particular years, 2017 and 2019, there were more boys than girls showing up at these clinics. I mean, of course, biological boys and girls showing up at these clinics. He relied on a survey that he himself has said in the past, from this survey, you cannot infer anything about the biological sex of respondents. And not only that, but he provides 3 citations to his claim that you can, in fact, infer the biological sex of respondents. And it only takes about an hour for any reader to comb through these 3 articles and see that none of them say anything of that sort. And then finally, the researchers who designed the survey in question themselves cautioned against using the survey to infer anything about the biological sex of respondents. So based on those 3 pieces of evidence, which include, as I said, Turban's own claim from the past that you can't do what he now is doing in 2022, he just ran roughshod over all of that and ignored it and just said, I'm just going to do it anyway because he wants to disprove social contagion theory. And of course, this got through the peer-reviewed process. How is beyond me. And it was immediately kind of plugged into this media echo chamber that he has helped to create, where all these mainstream media news outlets were just kind of repeatedly citing his study, saying there's no social contagion. It's a total fiction. It doesn't happen. All these kids are just born that way. They know who they are. They deserve their hormones, this, that, and the other. And then once it got picked up in the mainstream media, it kind of took on a life of its own. Then you have journalists citing other journalists, and it becomes idea laundering. I think that's a pretty appropriate word for what's going on here. It's idea laundering.